there's just a bit of waffle about car life, living in a car, living in a van. Van life's getting big, huge. And back in the day, you thought of people living in cars and vans were skint, had no money. It's not the case anymore. Okay, there are still people that still have to move into a car or van because they can't afford to pay rent. And I was one of those people 3 years ago. It's not a cough, it's not a cold. But that's it. But most people, a lot of people now in van life, got a few quid. They're not skint. They've got a house. They got they just enjoy the lifestyle and the van life community, and that's why they live in a van, live in a car. And van life is going smaller to micro campers and car derived vans like Peugeot in the UK, like Peugeot Partners and Peugeot Experts vans, that sort of size. Citroen Berlingos, all that sort of stuff. There's very small vans, because all you need is just somewhere to actually. You rent a room. All you're buying is the space that a bed sits on. That's all you're paying rent for. You're paying about £6,000 a year for the whatever it is. What is it? 6 foot, 7 foot bed, whatever it is, by 4 foot 6, 5 foot. You're not paying for the bed. The bed's about 100 quid, couple of 100 quid. You're paying for the joists it sits on. That's all you're paying for, because that's what you get. And when you realise that, you can put that in a Sprinter van, which you own, which means you haven't got to pay rent for. You just pay your road fund every year, your road fund licence. But then, if me living in a vehicle for nearly 2 years. But I tried it before I lived in a vehicle. While I was still living in a rented room, I tried it. Cold winter. It was snow. Right? So I've actually been 2 winters whilst living in a car, and a winter with snow on the windscreen. Before I lived in a car, I was still living in a rented room. But if my experience of living in a car helps you, if you're in that situation now, we're going into January. If you're an agency worker, chances are there might not be a lot of work, although we're in a staff shortage, so there could be. But for a few years, I was an agency driver for over 8 years, and January and February is a quiet month. Especially if you actually are on an umbrella scheme for an agency, if you haven't actually requested that you want your holiday stopped, you've actually already been paid your holiday each week. Which means in January and February, when the work gets quiet and you want to have a week off, or just get some money from holiday and stay at home, excuse the fake coughing, you won't be able to get that money because you've already been paid it, which means it could be difficult, which means you may have to it may put you into rent arrears and all sorts, as it did me. I was in that situation where it put me into rent arrears because I was already, my first year, for one agency on an umbrella scheme. I never want to go on the umbrella scheme. Always prefer straight on the books. Always prefer on the books. But I was in an industry that went from being employed only, going to the whole industry now is pretty much self-employed. So to be a driver, you need to be self-employed or limited or whatever. Very rare you get opportunities now for employed drivers. So that the industry pretty much came to an end when it went self-employed, because if you don't want to go self-employed, you can't really do your job that you've been doing for years and years and years. So I had to live I wasn't earning enough money to pay rent, and got myself into pickle, rent arrears. So I lived in a car for nearly 2 years. Right? But if my experience of living in a car helps you, you have to excuse the fake coughing like crap. But if my experience living in a car helps you, because trust me, it's much better than living in rented accommodation, I can tell you, for a fact. I've lived in rented accommodation for over 20 years, in rented rooms and shared houses. Let's just say, back in the day, it was good times. It's not anymore. Every tenant's grassing every tenant up. It's no fun. That's not a code, even though it's used as one. So basically, when I lived in the car, all I had was a 12 volt. I lived in a car, See, again, if you live in a car, find a comfortable way of sleeping, whether that be... See, I used to sleep in the front seat. I'm 6 foot. Never had a problem. Like now. No bad back. Not a problem. The human body sleeps when it's tired. It doesn't say I can only sleep on a flat bed. When you're tired, you've done a full day's driving or whatever, you'll fall asleep. You just automatically fall asleep. Or if you had a big meal, you sit in a nice comfy chair, put the heating on in the house, yeah. Put the TV on. Minutes later, snoring away, aren't you? You're not in the bed, are you? You're sitting in a comfy sofa, aren't you? That's... Yes, you'll see people want to have a flat bed in the back of a car. But if you're living on the road, and you're living off-grid, not actually in campsites, but you're living off-grid anywhere, a bit of rough land anywhere, just for a few hours kip each night, you may have to be moved on. You may get stopped, pulled over, yeah? Or you're already over, but you may get pulled, yeah? And then you get asked, you can't stay here, you've got to move, yeah? What happens then? You're not going to be in like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory where you bubble out on your little bubbles on your feet, are you? Back in the day, you need to be able to move if you're asked to move, you need to be able to move. Which is why, although I'm a driver, don't drink. Very rarely, don't drink. Can't remember the last time I had can't remember. Just basically, because when you're driving for a living, you can't anyway, because you need to be able to. It just causes problems, especially on agency, because you never know when you're going to work anyway. The next half an hour, you may be at work, so you have to. It's a good habit to get into, not drinking. But then when you're living in a car, it's also a good habit, because then if you've got to move, you've got to move. Yeah? So you can move. Yeah? If you're living in the car and you've parked up somewhere, you've had a pint, yeah, or a glass of wine, you can't move, can you? And then you get yourself in a figure where you've got to move, but you can't move. No, which makes like living in a car, van life, more difficult than it ought to be. Then you've got the power situation, right? Yeah. When I lived in a car, I chose not to have a cooker. I walked past, I see them in Alpha's 20, 30 quid, these little gas stoves, but I don't cook, so there's no point. And because I was a driver, I used to get my coffee like a cheap vending machine on warehouse, whatever I used to get sent to. And because I was an age driver, I was going to different warehouses. So after a while, you get to know who's got the best coffee machines and whatever, yeah. And you get a decent coffee, about a couple of quid. You might go to Greggs or something like that, or get breakfast on the road, or breakfast van, or something like that. So I chose not to have a fridge in the vehicle. I chose not to have a cooker in the vehicle. My only power was 12 volt, which back in, this is 3 years ago, like now, when you couldn't get a Jackery in the UK 3 years ago. Then you had the power rack. It's pretty much newish technology. Now you can get a Jackery. So basically, you get a Jackery. Okay, you're going to pay £250, 500 quid, grand, couple of quid, depending on how much power you want to use. And your solar panels, you get a foldable solar panel. Just put them in the boot. You haven't got to fix them on the roof. Just put foldable solar panels in the boot. And when you need to charge your Jackery up, you take wherever you park up, you park on a friend's drive or whatever it is, you can then just take your Jackery out, your solar panels, and charge your Jackery for free. You get free energy, don't you? But I only had 12 volt with the car, that's it. I had a radio with the drained power. I had a solar powered, a USB bug zapper, which had a light on it as well, which is dual purpose. And then when I used to have a little USB port, so I could charge the phone from I could charge the phone in USB into the bug zapper and put the bug zapper. So excuse me, only one USB into the 12 volt. But if I'd have had a Jackery then, I wouldn't have actually run the battery flat. And if you're living in a car, make sure you have I'm not saying make sure, but if you have a manual, you can bump start it. You can't bump start a automatic. Whereas if you get a low battery because you're draining it a bit, and you park on a bit of a hill, you've only got to put it in second gear, and you can bump start the car, can't you? If you get a flat battery, it will start automatically, won't it? And you can start it in reverse. You just dip your clutch. in reverse, or if you go reverse. Make sure you know, look what you're doing, yeah, because